Hello everybody, my name is Andrew and welcome to a special Zero Camp video about the January 2025 rules update for War Machine. This is part 9, our final video in the series about the update, and now we're going to talk about the mercenary models. Alright, so before I hop into the individual changes, unlike all the other videos, if you have seen them so far, I'm not going to give a final thoughts on what the changes may overall mean to the army, because for the mercenaries, there is no big army. It's just going to be the changes to the individual models. So let's go ahead and dive straight into it. We're going to go ahead and start by talking about Alexia, Queen of the Damned. Oh boy, I'm super stoked. As a Winter Corps player, this means a lot to me because she goes from cost 5 to cost 4, and she gains the Succor rule. So the Succor rule, for those of you who are not familiar, is that when that model is hit by a ranged attack, they pick a friendly warrior model within 3 inches to be hit instead. So it is non-optional, so that gets really fun if Alexia is, say, parked to next to your Warcaster. But that does mean that Alexia is going to be more survivable against ranged attacks. So she can be a little closer to the action, which is great because she wants to get in there and swing to add death toll to the already silliness that she's doing. This does mean, though, that she is not only more survivable, she's going to be around longer to bring more guys back. So this gets really fun for the armies that do get her. So right now that's Storm Legion and Winter Corps. Neither of them really have an ability to heal the people you are bringing back, so it's really particularly good for single wound models, but it's still good for multi-wound models as well. The big thing here is that Succor lets her get into the action, and as long as she's not getting meleeed back in return so people are shooting at her, she can just effectively shrug those off onto other people, which is great because, again, death toll on her weapon plus Battle Wizard means she's potentially adding 2 models back onto the table each turn. So Alexia gets more survivability, she gets cheaper, so she fits into more armies a little bit easier. I think overall this is just hands down fantastic for her, even though she's impacted by less stuff out there in the game. So Eilish Garrity, the Dark Trader. Realistically, not a big change to him. He just adds the Gatewalker rule, which is a rule actually that Eilish 1 had. After he casts a spell, he just gets to get placed within 5 inches of his current location. So he does operate currently within Sea Raiders and Storm Legion. What this just means for him is he gets to cast a spell and kind of bounce. It's like Alexia, it's going to make him more survivable, so we might see him in more lists because now suddenly he can go hide behind people. So just like Alexia, Eilish is no longer impacted by a lot of the things that may have helped him out before. So this is a nice positive change to see, so that just makes him more survivable on his own and within his own self-contained package. So now Gregor Boomhowler, the younger brother to the Admiral of the Southern Creoles, he gets quite a few changes. He does go from Arm 16 to Arm 17, which is super cool. He does, however, lose Unyielding and Relentless Charge. So he's no longer Pathfinder on the charge. It's a little bit of a bummer. He's also less armor melee. He did get +1 armor to kind of make up for it, which is nice. But the big thing here is that he gets this ability called Shouted Out. It is an action, so he can't run and do it. And it's only range 6, but target friendly, not friendly faction, target friendly model unit, they gain Force Barrier for 1 round. Force Barrier is +2 defense against ranged attack rolls and Resistance Blast, which is super nice. So this gives some fun anti-shooting tech to the Brine Blood Marauders, which is the only army he's in right now, and then eventually to Gravediggers. We talked a little bit about, with the Brine Blood Marauders, the Reef Trolls. You can now have a Def 14 against shooting Reef Troll as well, or that also can go on, say, a Heavy or a unit of Marauders you don't want shot. There's a lot of places in Brine Bloods that would really like to have some Force Barrier. So he's kind of changed into what looks like a late game piece. He's going to give out Force Barrier for a lot of folks during a play. He's going to charge later because he doesn't have Relentless, so he needs to be positioned a little further up. And losing Unyielding means he's going to want to hit squishier targets or softer targets that have already seen some damage. But the fact that he just gives out Force Barrier is so good. I foresee this being pretty much now an almost auto-include, especially in infantry-heavy Brine Bloods lists. Kruger, Wrath of Blightergast, Terror of Tables, Destroyer of Friendships, many other things. I saw a lot of folks playing with Kruger, and I sat there for a long time saying he's a crutch. I stand by that statement. That being said, The current version now that we've got the update, we've had some chance to digest it, has changed quite a bit. So going from cost 5 to 7 means he's more appropriately costed. He does increase from 8 to 10 damage boxes, which is fantastic, and he does go up in armor from 15 to 17. He's now harder to kill, just straight up. That being said, you are paying the price for it. He does lose the Burning Blight rule. So that's the rule that was the -1 armor but +1 to attack rolls for living models within 5 inches of him. Other living models to specify. Which means he's no longer just a walking armor debuff either, which is pretty nice. And his Howling Flames does become POW 13. Realistically, for House Kalis, for Storm Legion, and for Wintercore, who all can take him, he's still a solid choice. But at 7 points, you are paying for him. He's no longer an auto-include because he's not just nothing. That's half of a Warjack. That's half of an expensive Warjack for all of those factions. It's kind of nuts. I do think this is a very positive change. Seeing Kruger relatively unchanged aside from the Burning Blight rule going away, but becoming appropriately costed or pretty close to appropriately costed, I do think he should be 8. I don't feel like a crutch anymore. I feel like this is now a fun model to play for or against, and he still has an insane damage output. It's still super good. Do not get me wrong. But again, you now have to make choices with him. So I think for the armies that he's in, especially with the changes that Storm Legion has and Wintercore have, you're going to see this. He's not going to show up as often. He may still show up quite a bit for House Kalis just because debuffs are Kruger's best friend, but he doesn't get the same benefits inside their faction anymore. He doesn't get slid around the table by Tyrus. He doesn't get extra deafen armor because of with Hela's feet, which are all positive things. He got survivable on his own. He doesn't need the additional help anymore, but he's still good. Now the Sky Bomber, the all versions, meaning for every single version that exists for any of the Prime armies out here, they all decreased in cost from a 15 to a 13. There's the changes to the Propel rule, but then the other big change here, besides the fact that there's Speed 7, Rebo 5, is that the Fire Breather decreases its range. It's no longer Spray 12, it's now Spray 10. Probably a good thing. Coupled with the change to Propelled, it means that you're not just going to see, like, you left your deployment zone on turn 1, haha, I'm going to spray your dudes now, with 24 inches from a Sky Bomber, which was absolutely ridiculous, especially not in factions like you had TK with Seraphil, where you could just bump it up a little bit more. That being said, the decrease in cost, I think, justifies the decrease in threat range. A cost 13 battle engine is pretty solid. It's still a lot of boxes. It's still tough to remove. It is still a threat on the board. I foresee that this is, I don't want to say unchanged. Because of the maelstrom of changes around it, I don't think it's a more competitive choice with the points decrease, but I do still think it has a place in armies, especially given the faction-specific rules, which you can go look up in the app if you're not familiar with them. I think that they could work out still really well in some places. There's a lot of talk right now for some Dusk players about lists that include 2 Sky Bombers and 2 Sky Raiders. I don't know how well those are going to work out, but hey, you never know. Speaking of 2 Sky Bombers and 2 Sky Raiders, let's talk about Sky Raiders. So these bad boys also had a points decrease. They went from cost 14 to 11. If a cost 13 battle engine is cheap, a cost 11 battle engine is dirt cheap. This thing is insane. We have the changes to Propelled on here, just like we did with the Sky Raider. It's now a speed 7 with a Rebo 5. Unlike the Sky Bomber, the ranged weapon actually increased in range. The heavy gun went from range 8 to range 10. This one got a little bit more range thready, and that's a little bit scary. I think of the two, this is going to be the one you see more of. Don't get me wrong, Spray 10 still real good on the Sky Bomber, but the Sky Raider that gets to live a lot of game with Speed 7 Repo 5, especially at range 10. Getting to end 15 inches away from your target that you shot, all other things considered, it's not gonna get shot or hit back very often. There are things that can reach out and touch it. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. So I think the Sky Raider here, we're going to see more Sky Raiders. So let's talk about this baby, the Warbore Most Massive Destruction 47, the counterpart to one of the most infamous pigs in the game, Carver. So this model plagued tabletops even more so than Kruger because it was available to every Mark IV army and pretty much every legacy army or army of legend. Warbore was horrific. Big Pig is scary on the tabletop. We have a player in our local meta who plays Doors, the Rule Guard, and can give snipe to him. It was horrific. That being said, we had long talked about the changes we'd like to see well before the 2025 update. I think this is a good change. Changing the volley cannons from the number of shots they each had prior to, where it was D3, to just 1 with a force reload of 1 means he is still a tough target. He is still a threat. He still has good damage output, but he no longer picks up an entire heavy Warjack or War Beast on his own. That's probably the biggest difference, is now he gets 2 to 4 quality shots, but to have 4 quality shots, he has to force twice, which if you still have to boost on damage to make it really worth it for some of those shots, he's boosting less. This is a good change. I think this is very positive. I don't think Big Pig's going away, but I do think we're going to see him a lot less on the table, which is a good thing. He's no longer ubiquitous on the tabletop. He's no longer going to be the horror and scourge of every player out there. It is still going to be a threat, but now people will have to make a choice between taking Carver and Big Pig and taking other things in their army that may perform the job better. And lastly, up on the block for the mercenary changes is Zacchaeus, the Winter's Chill. Zacchaeus really only has one change. They gave him Battle Wizard. Now, Zacchaeus gets to run amok on the table, murder things, and cast a spell. And oh boy, is that just a good change straight up. Right now, he only works for Shadowflame, a faction that has seen some fun arcane tech. So right now, I think he's going to pair really well with a lot of the casters inside Kara, but especially Nixian. Battle Wizard with Breathtaker is phenomenal. So all of a sudden, he is almost a spotter for Shadowflame Shard. If he kills a model, he gets to cast Breathtaker, which is -2 def and -2 to melee damage rolls within 5 inches of him, but then he gets to reposition 3 to place that somewhere. Stack that with Breath Stealer. All of a sudden, we're talking about a -4 def swing. It's pretty good, especially since 2 of that comes from just being close to Zacchaeus. You don't have to telemetry. You don't have to spotters. You don't have to do like a boost to hit. That's just a -2 def for being close to him. And there's no caveats with that. You can't ignore it if you're resistant to cold or anything like that. It's just straight -2. Otherwise, Winter Storm is a fantastic option too. Enemy models that begin their activations within 10 inches of him lose Eyeless Sight, lose Flight, and Pathfinder for that activation. He just has to kill someone. As a cavalry model with a POW 14 melee weapon, it's a very doable prospect. It's very scary. He's already Mat 7. He'll hit whatever he wants to. And with a POW 14 charge, as long as it's not tough, or if you've been able to get rid of tough, he's removing that model. He is going to trigger Battle Wizard, and it's going to be scary. On top of that, he has Cleave, so you could wait to Battle Wizard, although that's objectively a bad choice most of the time. And Hoarfrost, his third spell, is not bad either. If you just want more offensive output, just Hoarfrost some people after you murdered somebody, which is an AoE spell also. It's a 14/8 AoE 2. He potentially, with Cleave and his initial melee attacks, just picks up a unit, which is also scary for a 6-point model. So the Battle Wizard edition is great. Again, right now he's just in Shadowflame Shard. His spells are objectively good anywhere, but the fact that you can stack that Breathtaker with Nixian's Breath Stealer gets really gross. So that concludes our video series. We've talked about all of the Prime armies and the core rules that have been addressed in the January 2025 update. We're super stoked to kind of wrap this up, but I hope you've enjoyed the videos. If you've watched all of them, fantastic. If you just wanted to see the mercenary changes, also fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Please feel free to like, subscribe if you liked the content. And we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers with YouTube this year, so that way YouTube pays us to produce content. Just all that little support goes a long way into helping us make more content. So Thank you to everyone who's watching. Appreciate you if you stuck it out for 9 whole videos. Thank you very much for watching the video. We will catch you hopefully on our next video or our next stream. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time.